some foolish people out here who look at their personal relations with white folk. And they have good white friends. And I'm not doubting the sincerity of the friendship. Not at all. Not at all. I do not doubt that blacks and whites can be truly friendly, and we should be friendly as people. And I don't see any problem with having those friends, you know. But do not confuse your personal relations with the relations between groups. Do not always assume that the dynamics that determine your personal relationships are the same dynamics that can be used between groups. That's a serious error that a lot of people make. I live by the code, that's my eye. Whipping vegan food up in my pot. Why they claim I acted so unruly? Cause I'm listening to Mwalimu, Baruti.
Peace, everyone. Welcome back to another Geechee Motivation Conversations. Tonight we're having another Elders Wisdom section. And this Baba doesn't have to introduce himself, but I want him to introduce himself to some of the people who might not know him. Baba, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes. Well, my name is Mwalimu Baruti. I'm married to a wonderful woman whose name is Baruti. We have been together for over 30 years, and within that 35 years, we have created an institution of education called Akaben Institute, which is in its, I believe, 22nd year. Now we go from the 4th grade through the 12th grade. We are independent. I do mean independent African-centered institution of education from, as I said, the 4th grade through the 12th grade. I also, of course, do lectures in the community globally as well. And I have just completed my 27th book. This has been the means by which I'm trying to deliver the word to the warrior. So the books cover a lot of issues, a range of topics that I believe warriors need to deal with, as well as based on questions and comments that I have heard or received from warriors. So I'm pretty much a community person. I will get behind the mic when people ask me to get behind the mic, but most of my work is with the Institute, our school, Akaben House, our publishing company, with the books that I write and the conversations that we have. We also do couples coaching. You can't say counseling anymore, but couples coaching. And we do, of course, other folks in the community involved in rights programs, whatever the community needs. That's what we do. I was raised up to understand you go where you need it, and you allow people, if we can use the word allow, you allow people to tell you what their needs are, and you do your best to solve them. So I'm very glad to be on here, because this warrior asked me to be on, and we can talk for a while. This Kwanzaa break is getting ready to kick in.
Thank you, Baba. One of the first questions I want to get right into, especially as you talk about, your efforts and your energy that you give to warriors. And we know that 2020 has been crazy, and going into 2021, it doesn't look like it's going to get any less crazier. During these times, what kind of messages would you give to the warriors to give to their minds or their employees, like you normally say? But what kind of words or information should you be giving to the warriors to tell or impart into their minds at this point?
Well, I think it's very important. I mean, these to me, even though they are not ideal for most of us, especially financially, for a lot of us in terms of health issues, but I think this is the perfect time to think. This is the perfect time to figure out where we're going. I started trying to find my way to this path. One of the things that I did was, on pretty much a monthly basis, write down a plan of action and write down a schedule by which I could fulfill that. But I needed time to do that. So for me, this is like the perfect time to sit back, plan, meditate, affirm things, find a better direction to where you're trying to go. Look at your they can be corrected. It's almost like, well, when I get back out the court or I get back out on the field, then I need to do that move better. I need to play that play better. So now is the time, since people aren't involved to they would like to be involved. It's like planning time. Like Malcolm said, the first time he had time to really sit down and think and to meditate on things in life was when he was in prison, because he couldn't do anything else. And there was ample time to do that. So there's ample time for us to think about what we need to do. We're trying to go, the effectiveness of what we're doing relative to the community, relative to our children, relative to the elders. What is it that we can do better? This is a thinking time, but it's also a practice time for practical skills. I don't have very much faith in the survival of Western society. So it's a continuous of trying to figure out what's going to work here, what's there, all kinds of possible scenarios, and to develop the best ideas on how to solve the problem so that those people you're responsible for can survive and thrive. So it's time for acquisition of practical skills. As an example, imagine how much you could learn or could have learned in 2020 and possibly in 2021 if you watch one survival video every day. That's one aspect of this issue. Watch one 10, 15-minute survival video every day, how much you would acquire in 365 days. It's also time in terms of where we are going, where warriors are going, and what to do and feel about them. Over the years, I've encountered a lot of warriors who spend a lot of time beating up on themselves, especially for past errors, for things that they done in the past, things that they cannot correct in terms of changing that situation. That doesn't mean, of course, that they can't do what they need to do to set a standard in the future. Not to bring Malcolm back again, but we need to bring him back for a second, because that's one of the main reasons why I admire him so much. He made a lot of mistakes when he was young. He hurt a lot of us. But when he realized it, he spent the rest of his life trying to set a standard, an example of not doing that, so that no one behind him could use that as an excuse as to, doing things they had no business doing. So warriors need to find a way to forgive themselves for the things that they've done. It's a time where, when you have time to seriously meditate, when you have time to think about where you're trying to go, why you're so mad at yourself, what you can do to correct that anger. It's time for self-healing. It's time for self-appreciation. It's time for a little more self-forgiveness, for what you have done, for things that you, and I'm pretty sure that 99.9% of us have done things that if we could do it all over again, we would definitely take those out of the picture, and maybe even take out the majority of the picture. But we have to forgive ourselves. We also need to spend time thinking about, as I said, how we're going to do whatever it is that we're going to do. History is supposed to be a lesson. It's supposed to, as is our story, it's supposed to teach us the mistakes that we made. It's supposed to give us the opportunity, by seeing that, to correct those. And one of our major mistakes, as far as I'm concerned, is that we need to be seen, and we expect things to be done in large numbers, and we want these major miracles to happen. And history teaches us that when we operate in this fashion from scratch, like not wanting to start at the bottom of the company by creating the company and then making it into something large, versus jumping into something that's already established and already be at the top, that's not work. That's not strengthen you. But we have to, when we look back at history, we see that whenever we get loud, whenever we get really, assuming that it's not already funded and financed by them, then they immediately come to destroy it if they perceive there's anything that speaks to being African is going to be a threat to them automatically. It doesn't make a difference how it's phrased. It doesn't make a difference how pretty it is. If it's large and it's visible to them, then they're going to find a way to infiltrate and destroy, or just. So we need to think about ways of doing things small And small is not bad. Small is nothing negative. There's no more negative than large. We need to learn how to think. We need to begin to think about things in small, as well as doing them, as I like to say, way, way, way under the radar. Not just under the radar, but way, way, way under the radar. Not letting anybody know what's going on. Ways to be very vocal about what we're doing and who we are, so we can be known, so that we can be seen. You set yourself up as a target by the people who've been systematically working to destroy us. Point of contact. Okay, so it's a time to think. Now, close this answer with a statement that I was told. I'm a slow reader. Now, I've always been a slow reader. When I was young, I was very ashamed of that. As I got older, I came to understand comprehension was a lot greater than a lot of the people who were reading that 5 to my 1 book. So before I realized this, I encountered a older brother who was from the continent, and he said to me, "Don't think a lot," and it clicked. We spend so much time trying to consume stuff that we're not getting the heart of it. We're not getting the soul of it. We bought into this idea of rushing, of running, of everything's got to be timed. It's got to be, no, your mind doesn't work like that. The mind has to have time to sit down, settle, sift through whatever you've given it, so it can figure out what it means for you, and then get that idea, that information back.
So, Bob, you talked a little bit about this time of kind of like sitting still, learning and studying, or just overviewing and figuring out what we need to do. And I saw something that you post and talk about cultural glaucoma. Could you like explain that a little bit more for people who are probably new to the term? But what does that mean, and especially what does it mean for us, and what we need to do with our culture going forward?
Okay, I didn't hear the word. I heard your statement, but I didn't hear the word that you're talking about.
The culture, yeah, cultural glaucoma.
Glaucoma.
About it before.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's one of the things that I came up with. Someone may have used it before. I have no idea. Like my mother always says, nothing new under the sun. But I was thinking, the thought came to me about 5 days ago, because a friend of ours has glaucoma, and I thought about what causes it, and it's caused by a lot of pressure on the eye for a long period of time, and it builds up in such a way, I can't explain it in medical terms, but it builds up in such a way that causes blindness from the pressure. Just like hypertension can cause blindness from the pressure, which is a point about African people in European reality, where there's always a lot of pressure on us. And they know that, so they apply the pressure because they know that pressure kills. We don't respond the same way we see blue lights flashing behind us as white folks do when they see blue lights flashing behind us. And they know that a part of genocide is not just this diet, it's not just shooting people, but it's also creating a life where you are constantly on edge. Or if you're not constantly on edge, you're going to find out real soon that you need to be constantly on edge, and it keeps you in a state of being under pressure all the time. And most of us don't handle that very well. So for me, cultural glaucoma is working in the same way, where there is so much pressure applied to us on a minute by minute basis, on an hourly basis, on a daily basis, that we don't become, most of us don't become unable to move. I mean, we can still walk around, we can still operate, but in order to maintain our sanity, our ability to survive, to live, I didn't say to thrive, but I'll say to survive, because there's a difference between surviving and thriving. Okay? In order for survive and to be what we need to be for our children, and to be what we need to be for our parents, and to be what we need to be for those people who we love, our compliments, as well as the community in general, we have to be in a place where we can function properly, where we can do what needs to be done. For some of us, that means to be completely blind to who we are, to not want to see anything about anything being African, because that can reintroduce the pressure, that can bring the pressure. If I'm If I'm mental, then in my mind, I'm not African. I'm in complete and total denial to some degree or another, because there are degrees of mental. But if I'm absolutely mental or significantly mental, then I don't believe that what's going on is going on. I don't believe that genocide is being committed against my people. I don't believe that I'm being targeted by the European state and its agents to remove me from existence. So if I can put on that cultural glaucoma where I don't have to see what's going on, it allows me to remove a lot of the stress in my life, because people who realize what's going on, it may not be the funnest life to live in Urugu's reality, but uh, it it allows us to move in a particular direction toward the empowerment of African people, versus somebody who has the blinders on. I'm not African. I don't have to worry about what's going on with African people. That's irrelevant to me. I don't see. I am blind to that.
One of the things that in terms of a cultural standpoint, but also just like our experience with Urugu, uh, they put a bad taste in our mouth about anything that's spiritual or even religious. And so in our community, especially I think in people who claim to be African centered, there's this concept of like science versus spirituality. And it's kind of like when you see that argument,
Mm-hmm.
or you see folks that saying they're more scientific than spiritual, what's your thoughts on it? What's your like? How do you like decipher that dichotomy?
Well, there are two things in there for. Well, I guess I want to say three things, because I try very hard to not engage myself in arguments or discussions that don't make any sense to me. That saved me a lot of time. That saved me a lot of sanity. But of course, you have to deal with some things when this is how people approach you. When I was in grad school, how do I make this story long? When I was in grad school, one of the things that I eventually came to understand, because that was where I really began to find my way here. And that had to do with isolation. That didn't have to do with the graduate school. University of Chicago is not about the business of educating you yourself, unless it's them. I came into the realization that Urugu is intent on separating science from spirit, because if they connected not just their sterility as thinkers and their sense of being able to themselves from what they're studying, so that there is no emotional or intellectual component that'll get messed up or become subjective in that separation. So to them, oh wow, to them, spirit is negative. It's something that they understand. It's something that they can't feel. I remember in the 60s we say we have soul, music, everything. We understood clearly what we were talking about. It was something that you feel. It was something that you know is connected to everything. We understood that. So when we said that, it wasn't just some fancy lyric in a song. It was something that we felt. The Queen of Soul, the King of Soul. We understood what that meant. It wasn't just because they sang well. I was, as a social scientist, one of the things that I saw was, or came to figure out, was that the main reasons why they have to separate science from spirituality or spirit is because if they don't, then based upon universal law, they will condemn. There won't be any question about who did what, who's good, who's bad, because spirit is going to show that. Science is a tool. It's a method. It's supposed to be. You can have bad science and you can have good science, but it's supposed to be a tool by which you can study whatever it is that you need to find answers to and find truth. That's what it's supposed to be. One of the main problem for me in this is the divisiveness that these arguments create in the community. Uh, for me, I don't see any way we can separate being African from being spiritual. And being spiritual, spirit is what guides our science. Okay. For me, the main problem here, just like the problem with whether we were here before we were enslaved, or whether we came across all of the, or whether we're the best of the Africans who came because, you know, we're the ones that survived it. You know, these arguments, they fragment African people. They continue to create more and more fissures, more and more divides, till it gets to a point where we can't see each other as one, as two, as three. We can't do that because our whole approach to everything, having to be seen, having to always be right, it guides us to not be able to get along in a way, and that allows us to be fragmented in all these ways. This is the logic that everything is an argument, and the most intelligent person is the one who wins the argument. That might be the dumb. He just has good argumentative skills. He's got good logical skills, what have you. That doesn't mean that he is right. But it takes us to a point where everything becomes a fight. Everything becomes a disagreement. You can't create a communal environment with that. All you're doing is fragmenting and fragmenting and fragmenting and fragmenting. And of course, everyone should know that this thing that we're dealing with right here, this social networking, can be used in a very powerful way, which I think is being used right now. But it can be used, it is being used as a weapon against us, not just a tool. It's being used as a weapon against us. This has been breaking Africans from their spirit. That's been Europeans' primary objective since they first encountered us. Because when you can break up people from their spirit, then they have no power. You can do what you want to with them now. That's prisons and the solitary confinement concentration. That's a purpose for crack. You break us further and further and further apart. And we can't get along. We can dream about it, but we can't get along. They know our power in a united way, even in small groups. So their job is to divide us up. I remember another thing about grad school. The subconsciously, the University of Chicago is like 1% Black folks at the graduate level, and the school is mostly graduate students. There, the Africans who were there, they knew for the most part, there was a small fraction of us, but they knew for the most part that the last thing they wanted to do was to have, that last thing they wanted to happen was for Europeans, their peers, their classmates, to together congregating, because they understood subconsciously the threat that we put them when we were collective. So I would find Black folks, you know, half a block away, Black students, and they would cross the street, not to be seen, you know, having to speak. And, you know, that's one example, but there were many examples of this. But it's like we've taken killing each other from Urugu for the most part, and we're doing it ourselves. We've taken this divide and conquer amongst ourselves, even though it's this individualistic conquer. But we've taken this divide from each other to a whole another level. I'm sure Urugu is sitting back with great pride, you know, of what they have done, and can sit back and watch this clown show, this circus, irrelevancies, and where the people who are actually doing the work, those voices you don't hear.
So I also in my young years have seen what I would call a severe fracturedness in the nationalist, nation building, Pan-African, whatever term, but a severe fracturedness in there. And we can look at leadership, we can see those things. And I want to talk about that a little bit more later, but as of right now, from your experience, what are the most effective styles of leadership that that work for you, work for people who you felt like led you, or do you think that just what kind of style of leadership have you seen being really effective over the years?
Well, I always say worker leader. If you're not doing the work, you know, you're not a leader. To me, those should be the only effective leadership styles that we have. Of course, we have to have people who speak, but that should be a very small minority. The most effective leadership style for me is the one that's a model of a worker. Actually doing work. We need work done. We have all the conversations that we need. Of course, the conversations I said should continue, but we need people who are doing work. seen as the real leadership in our community, those who are actually doing the work, those who are out there actually dealing with the young folk, those who are actually setting up the institutions, those who are actually doing the raised beds, actually going and mowing the elders' lawn, actually going and not pulling out the camera, but going in to break up whatever needs to be broke up, as long as it's not going to kill them. We need leaders who are actively engaged in the work of building community. We need leaders where it's not just one person. I mean, the West has us thinking, as long as I'm articulate, as long as I sound good, then it doesn't make a difference what my personal behaviors are like. I can do whatever it is I want to do as long as I sound good, because people are going to ignore. And that's a whole nother, the image is so important in the West, even though behind the scenes I'm beating my wife, even though behind the scenes I'm allowing my children to be miseducated, even though behind the scenes it doesn't make a difference. As long as I sound good, as long as I can fake the funk and pretend to be whatever it is that I'm saying that I am, then I'm good. And because we have been trained to love entertainment, we gravitate toward those individuals who are most entertaining, even though we're doing nothing, even though they're doing nothing. Okay, so if an African model, which is what we're supposedly that we're calling considered, if we're using an African model, the African model is based upon the leadership of a man and a woman together. An African model, you judge a person's leadership skill, the family's leadership skill, based upon how they treat each other. So if it's just the man who's speaking, well, my first question is going to be, how is he treating his wife? How is he treating his family? How is he treating his children? That's going to be the measuring rod of whether I even think to put him in a category of being some kind of a leader. We just have a bunch of misleaders for the most part. And so it's that if we follow the African model, then the leadership is going to be determined by the work that they're doing. We're supposed to have a leadership that is male and female together. That doesn't mean that everybody is going to be an ideal relationship and everything's going to work out perfectly and you don't move apart no matter what the situation is. There's some situations that are not going to work out between a man and a woman. To be the ideal model. That should be the ideal model. Okay, people should know my wife as well as they know me. Okay, so that to me is working. But more than anything else, actually doing something. Actually, running off at the mouth is not it's not work. That's running off at the mouth. I was brought, a fool can talk, but you actually implement that to actually build things. I understand why a lot of young folks are upset and disappointed at the older than them. For significant time, it's been a lot of talk, and to my knowledge, I don't know of the continuing argument having moved us closer to empowerment or sovereignty. Somebody would have to show me that.
That's pretty fair. I think you kind of touched on it, but to be clear, are there any things that you say would be counterproductive, things that you have seen that are counterproductive to nation building? Quite often we again, I know the talking part is not that important, and then the studying part, we kind of say, forget the studying, let's get to work. I don't want to talk, let's get to work. But are there some counterproductive things that you see out there that's counterproductive to nation building?
Oh, absolutely, very long. Sadly, it would be very, very long. We are engaged again in meaningless, distracted debate, and that becomes our life. That becomes, the revolution is being televised. The revolution is a conversation. No, not. We're engaged in this things within the center community. I really should say the conscious community, because the center community is reasoning is the shackles of the coward. The center community I separate from the conscious community, because the center community is supposed to have a level of integrity. There are supposed to be certain parameters that are not violated within the center community. So I'll say, no Euros, no Negroes, no homos, no promos. Those are supposed to be parameters within at least the center community circle I'm a part of. So, but even within there,
There are issues of menticide. I see people spoiling their children. And my mother used to tell me when I was young, you don't spoil a child to be where people are going to try to kill them. You raise them up, you raise them up strong. You may raise them up aware. You don't raise them up weak. And if we're saying we're at war, then we shouldn't be spoiling our children, which is, of course, is a whole nother point about the basic etiquette. In war, people doesn't give the children an option of whether they want to be at war or not. You're not raising your child to be murdered by. But we're seeing people who are supposed to be in the center community who are raising their children like they have a choice. Okay, if this event is supposed to be African, then everybody, including the children, should have African attire. And I don't care if that sounds strict or what have you. No, if the adults are wearing them, then the children should wear them. The children should be taking the responsibilities, or they're modeling themselves to be African. Just at the level of basic etiquette, I've had children come to our front door and walk in without speaking. And these are children in the center community. And I'm like, I look at Eni and she's trying to avoid it. We'll correct it later, but it's amazing to me that these things were not taught, because you're allowing your child just to be themselves, et cetera, et cetera. And there are, certain things that they shouldn't have to do, and certain things that they shouldn't have to be involved. But we're supposed to be at war. Okay, you go to my father. He went to Vietnam 3 times, and he would tell me about military things to be aware of, to think about. And one of the points he impressed upon me, even though he never said these words, was that these people, as a people, were at war with Europeans. Before them, the French, et cetera, et cetera. But they were at war with Europeans, and everybody was military. Everybody in the military. So he said, when they arrived, one of the first things they would tell you is that if a child comes running towards you, hands out, trying to hug you, and they have like a sweater on or a jacket on, and say, run. Because more than likely, they have dynamite strapped to them, and as soon as they hug you, they're going to set it off, because they understand that they're at war. We're up here pretending like we're at peace, that everything is going to be fine. A little dancing, a little praying, and Google will change into something user-friendly again. So that to me is a major, major problem. In the center community, there is security priority. And I keep coming back to this. If we're warriors, if we're supposed to be at war, then there's a certain approach to things. So there should never be an event with African people where all of the men don't understand that they are security while the women do their magic. Okay, that should never be the case. The boys should be involved in that in some way, shape, form, or fashion. We don't have a security priority, but we're walking around talking about we're at war. Well, people who are at war, they move in a certain. See an African woman with her baby in a stroller heading out an event into a parking lot at night by herself. That's, to me, common sense. If you're at war, if you're not at war, well, let it go out there. Whatever happens, it's no problem, because, we're individuals. I guess I say finally, well, number one is involved in the other one, the nitpicky gossiping. We don't even check to see if the person who somebody said this about us said it. We just go run with whatever we're told. We don't think about what we're being told that other people are telling us, which is a reflection of character. We don't want to talk about character unless we're talking about somebody else. We don't want to talk about character because that will put us into question based upon the way that we continue to act toward each other. We're trying to turn ourselves into our ancestors. What they say, the best way to honor a fallen soul, pick up their weapon. Well, the best way to honor our ancestors is to be them. And we're using them like Negroes use black first. Look what we did. Look what we did. But I'm not doing, look what we built. Look what we built. I'm not building anything. If I can make a claim that I don't really have to do anything. There are a lot of positive things that I see in the center community as well. I see people struggling in situations where they should have fallen, where they should have toppled, where they should have given up on being African, because being African is a difficult way of life in Yoruba's reality. They should have given up, but they are strong. I see people still helping people when they really can barely help themselves in the center community. I know a couple who has planned the escape routes and for all of the elders in the community, and they really don't have time to do that. You know, they don't. I mean, they have their own children and their own lives to lead, but they're concerning themselves with folks in the community who they believe they need to be see now more Black men security at our events. Mamas, I'm fond of saying, if mamas are doing a sewing circle and it's in this house and men are not allowed in that space because they don't want them listening to what they're saying, then there still needs to be 8 or more men somewhere around that property making sure that nobody touches that house. But we're not thinking in those terms. We're not thinking in those terms yet. But as I said, I see some people who are doing this, who are looking out for the children, who are creating independent educational institutions, and they're doing it without compromise. And they're not compromising what they're saying to the children. They're not compromising what they're teaching to the children. A significant amount of the community at work together in all areas. So it's, sadly, they overwhelm greatly the positive things. And we are, center community is a work in progress. And say I see more, well, I'll say it like this, relative to other communities, relative to the conscious community as a whole, the center community is doing beautifully. I see all kinds of things within the quote unquote conscious community. Here in West End where we live, I see a whole lot of embracing of Yoruba who's invading, and they're running to them for assistance. They're running to them for their money. They're running to them with arms open to welcome them into this community, into this space that they are violating and invading. And I heard the same thing having to do with Harlem, thing in DC. Okay, so the center to be proud of at this point in time.
You know, one of the things that I was hearing as you talk, we talk about this in our study group a lot. You know, African people in America have mastered the art and escapism, rather through religion, rather through whatever other stuff. They love escapism, and then also when you talk about like the conscious community and even the center community, but things that we do. And you said the word that I want to go to next, which is progress. So me and Asafa, one of my brothers, we had this lecture and we're working on this book about how to critique African progress in America. So we want folks to stop focusing on representation. Don't be like the parasitic, violent people, and focus more on expiation, repairing yourselves, and getting into a place where you're sovereign, and not so much on amelioration, but liberation. So amelioration is they'll steal your food, and you'll develop a hunger headache, and then they'll give you a Tylenol, and then everybody's celebrating. So when you think about the way we are oriented and looking at progress, what would you say is progress, or what should progress look like, especially being African centered? Like, what should progress look like, and what would you direct us away from thinking that it's actually progress?
Well, first I would tell warriors to read. Mama Rimba Ani wrote an article on progress that is incredible. A number of years ago, when before her name was Marimba Ani. This is a very, 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 very important article. I would venture to say, even though she, of course, will probably disagree with me significantly, that article is maybe more important than Urugu to our thinking at this particular point in time. So we're not trying to be meaning of European. Folks need to read that article. Folks really need to read that essay, that article. Progress for us, the absolute end of progress needs to be period. No ifs, no ands, no buts. And sovereignty means that you're not compromising. Sovereignty means that enemies fear you not to step into your space because what you're going to do as a result of that. Right.
right now, for me to go back to the small idea is extremely important in the idea of progress, because we know what we're dealing with. We know who we're dealing with. We need to look at this like we're trying to build cells. And if the CIA is listening to whatever, then they can misinterpret. But we need to get this like we are trying to build safe, sacred spaces for small numbers of African people where we can practice being African as well as move in the directions that you were just talking about in terms of us becoming powerful Africans as a people. You know, of course, we know everybody's not gonna make it. Everybody's not worthy. Everybody's voice is not worthy of being heard. But if we're about developing, we're talking about, we need to stop measuring our progress based upon Urugu progress or how Urugu has defined us. That to me is very important. So they constantly see the destruction or whatever of African people, and they say, "Oh, we're not progressing." Well, to me, the further I move away from Urugu, the further I'm progressing. You're talking about economics, you're talking about, it's more I'm moving away from them, then the more progress I'm making. We've got the definition of progress backward. It's not toward them, it's away from them that's progress. And within those groups, within those small groups, the plans can be made wherever we are at. The land needs to be measurable. The reason why people here have gotten reparations is because their homeland, their motherland, their fatherland became strong relative to the United States. So the reason why the Japanese who were interned during World War II received reparations from California, from LA, and from the United States was because the United States became a debtor nation to Japan. It wasn't because there was some great love or some movement or some liberal what have you. It was because of the power of their homeland. Same thing with European Jews, even though their power, it's a little different in terms of their homeland, but still. We have to, of course, strengthen Africa, but everybody, of course, can't be there at this point in time. I'm a maker of repatriating. I have absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. And I know a great number of people, not just a small number, I know a great number of people who have done this. And those who have done this, who I know, they're going over because their goal is to empower the continent. Not just to go get a job, not just to get a house, not just to retire so they can chill with a company that's going to take a little more. No, they're going to build. And they immediately get to work. And they've made trips over there to see, where they're best suited, where they can do their best work, who's in what areas, et cetera, et cetera. And then they go and they stay, which I applaud this. Everybody, of course, can't go at a particular point in time. But the mentality would be there. It's like when Warriors said, two in particular came and they said, well, am I a bad person? Does that make me weak? Does that make me less of a warrior because I'm working for the federal government, or I'm working for, McDonald's, I'm working for, whatever, and I haven't created our own income? I said, no, the question is your mind thinking in that direction? Are you giving your brain the instruction to make you independent? Are you doing everything in your power right now, right? Some dream, but are you doing everything in your power right now to move in the direction? And for me, that levels, that's the definition of progress. To be able to move out of a job that you've been dependent upon, just take it, blah, 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 to a point where you can begin to seriously build the kind of family and community that we need, that's progress. To be able to relocate to where there are a significant number of Africans so you can build sovereignty there, that's progress to me. To have that vision constantly. Garvey, right up here, Garvey on the brain, where you are constantly trying to move in the direction of that idea. That ideal, that is progress. Even if you got a raised bed in your yard, but you know that you need land. Well, you're raising the food in a portion of it, you're selling it. When you sell that portion, you put that money someplace so that at some point in time, you use that money to buy some land so you can really produce for African people, for the community. All these peace, all of those are progress. Which is so dominant in our community. But that to me is progress. The things that we need to work on, they don't need to be elaborate. They don't need to be huge. It's simple common sense.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So we're wrapping up. We got about 15 more minutes. If you have any questions for Baba, make sure you type your questions in the comments. And if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, appreciate you being here. Just share the video. Baba, this next question, I love and honor you, and I'm glad that you're here. I'm not sure that you know how much you inspire people and how much people grow because of things that you've done, written, said, and you're in that space where I know for myself and people who've been inboxing me like, oh, I met him once, and you know, like the energy that you give us is very powerful. And my question is, in your growth, like who was those Baba Barutis to you? Like who was those people who kind of push you and put you in the space that you're in right now? Who's the elders, the leaders, and those people that you look
at? Most important, what you just said, is my wife. Because of the things that she helped me to consider and move out of my way, which were very destructive to me. And she has always said, do it. I remember teaching undergrad, and I was always, at least in terms of potential trouble, because I don't lie to my students. And it reaches a point, just like in chess, you reach a certain point where you sort of get stagnant and then you make a leap. So for me, that I would get to that point, I was getting ready to take a leap in terms of the truth that the magnitude of the truth that I told. And I would, the first time that this happens, I told her, and I was being perfectly honest. I said, you know, you might want to think about, you know, moving back to Mississippi with your family. You got, you know, some land, blah, 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 because I'm getting to take it. And she knew where I was going. I'm getting ready to take it. And she laughed and walked out the room. So that was like, okay, do what you need to do. And I'm standing right here. And I'm going to do what I need to do right there. In terms of other individuals, Baba Hannibal Afrique, who a lot of people don't know this man's name. He was like fingernails dirty, red, everything did. He wasn't no compromising. He did not play. Either you working for African people or you're not, period. If you got to think about it, he was the one that said if it helps Africa, then it's good. If it hurts African people, it was bad. It was that simple to him. Brilliant man. Brilliant man. He circles around me in terms of the work that he did. I dedicated a center to him, and I sent him a copy. And then I called, and no, I didn't call. He called me. He was mad. He said, "Don't be calling me a Jegna. I'm not a Jegna. I haven't done this. I haven't gone into, you know, bloody combat European." I said, well, you know, we see you that way because of what you do, brother. And I don't know how was it I said, but he calmed down. Station ended good. But Hannibal Afrique is a major level training. He was doing an elders rites of passage program. He transitioned a year before I was eligible. At that was a major blow for me. Larry Obadelli Williams, who most people don't know, he was behind the scenes men who did not compromise. Most folks, it's like you go on college campuses and you see certain classes that people have like 5 or 6 students. It's not because it's such an advanced course, it's because the students are afraid of that person. They're afraid of what they're going to have to do, and they're afraid of that person's mind. Larry Obadelli Williams is one of those people. He had read everything. When I was writing K-Buka, he came over here with a shopping cart and a suitcase full of books, magazines, maps, pictures. He said, you know, you might be able to use somebody in the book. And it's like, that was him. He had the massive pictures. He was responsible for bringing, one of the people responsible for bringing Sheikh Anta Diop here. He was responsible. He was like John Henry Clark's right-hand man. For years, nobody knew. And when he transitioned, he was Sybil Clark's right-hand man for years. Was Mama Rimba's right-hand man for decades. Whenever you saw her, you see him. Well, you might not see him because he's going to be over somewhere out of the way. Mama Rumba, she is. There are really no words to describe the power of this woman. She, I don't even describe. When she says hello, I feel like a little child. Okay, and I see her on pretty much the regular. You know, she comes to Akabin. She started coming to my events when she arrived in Atlanta. She's sitting down the front row, and I'm thinking, what am I supposed to say? You know, this is the master right here. You know, what am I going to be able to teach her? You know, and of course that took me back to Nana John Harry Clark, who was another one of mine, who was her teacher. Who I remember him being asked, "Well, what do you do in situations where you lecture, and you know that many of the people in the audience know more than you do?" And they were talking about butterflies and being a little nervous when you come up. He said, "Well, I start to think of I'm the expert at this. Okay? I'm the one speaking. But at this moment, I'm the one who speaks. And for those who do speak, that works wonders on your presentation. Because I'm standing in front of her. There were two other mamas in the community who were extremely powerful, and I'm like nervous in front of them, you know, because they know, and I'm hoping I don't make a mistake. That's the level of honor I have for her mind. She has done what she's supposed to do. Also, talking didn't start Jack. She's had African heritage after school programs since her daughter was little. She brought her to Atlanta with her when she came. She has built institutions. She has taught. She has assisted people in trying to do the work. She is that model of progress that we need to talk about. I mean, I know there are other people, and I know other people by name. Baba Sanyika. There are a whole bunch for folks who are most visible. If you want to look at somebody who is the combination of all of those things that we need, from uncompromising honesty to fingernails getting dirty. Now, Emperor's Child, that's Obadeli. Okay, and he was, of course, an important man as well. But Larry Bedeli Williams would have never seen him as a visible leader, you know, in terms of the differences. But that's a different Baba Obadeli. But Mama Rumba, I mean, I could talk to her, and I've had to talk about her recently. It's like she's so busy trying to, and people like this are so busy trying to save us, trying to help us to survive, trying to move us toward sovereignty. One of the little stories I tell, when she first came to Atlanta, her daughter drove her over here, and I was in class, and I was able to get out the house, go meet her when she, you know, the car drove up. And so as soon as I was able, I put the children on break and I ran outside. Oh, Mama Rumba, it's, you know, in person, you know, blah, blah, blah. And we have 5 copies of Yerula, one for me, one for our daughter, one that, you know, blah, blah, blah. And we have this hardback. And she said, hardback? Yeah. And I realized at that point, she had never seen a hardback of her own. Because for her, when it was done, it was done. She's not prepared to explain this, but she's not, okay, look at my book and, you know, rub it and all the rest of this. She's going on to another project. So I came in. I was really proud of that. I came in. I brought the hardback out. I said, nobody ever touches this book. It's never been open past the table of contents. I don't allow anybody to touch this book. It's like the Bible in our house. You know. But those people like that, and there are so many who, if I call out their names, you wouldn't know, just here in the center community here, who are doing incredible work. You don't hear their voices. They're just busy doing the work. What do you need, Baba? You know, you people who, you know, you get up in the morning because you hear, or you're in the classroom and you hear noise in the yard. And of course, you immediately go to look to check because you're at war. And there with her running over the ground in a raised bed in the backyard. You know, nobody, she didn't say, can I, you know, can I, she's just back there doing the work. And when she's finished, she leaves. She doesn't want, you know, all, she's not asking me to bring her any water. She's doing the work. Those are the ones who I honor the most.
So one of the last questions I want to ask. So obviously we're speaking this language of uh, these people, or if you want to call them that, and their language is often weaponized, and we sometimes speak and we have different definitions and all these other things. It's confusing, right? So if you can, could you help us clear up some misunderstandings with sovereignty, liberation, freedom? Are they all the same? Are they different? Like, could you clear up any misunderstandings that we might have with those things?
I would like to. Relative to Mama Rumba, one of the things that I'm proudest of is that she loves the definition that I created. And of course, everything that you create comes out of everything that you already know. And I'm coming right to that, but what you just said reminded me of a quote where our ancestors said that the Greek language was one of noise and confusion. And as we become sub-integrated into their reality, thinking that they are the model for humanity, we have speak language of noise and confusion. We have mastered it with our genius better than them, if you will, and we've taken it to a whole nother level, or at least we've taken it to a level where they couldn't reach because they couldn't reach so deep into us. There is a major difference when you talk to children about sovereignty. You see the effect of that. You really see the effect of that difference in definition, especially when you're giving them a charge. Okay, when you are explaining to them, this is your responsibility. This is something that you need to do, and they start looking at the world differently. They start looking at the world differently than the idea of we're free to what? Sleep with Urugu. We are, because there's no definition that goes with that, and that definition can vary. Okay, like the Middle Passage. What does the Middle Passage mean? It's a route that goes from one place. There's nothing political about that statement. So when we talk about sovereignty, we're talking about specific things. We're talking about the military empowerment of African people. We're talking about an education that reflects our spirituality, our sense, our. We're specifically talking about empowering African people independent of anybody else. Liberation doesn't mean, I know a lot of people would consider themselves toward liberty, and they're sleeping with the enemy. They're gender confused. They have no idea about what it means to truly be African. They are taking what it means to be African and try to turn it into something European, and their sovereignty. Sovereignty means that there is no one who controls anything about what you do. No one controls your definitions. You are self-defining. You are self-empowered. You're self, everything. We're trying to find a way of getting there without having to work at it. We're trying to redefine sovereignty so that it's user-friendly for Urugu. Sovereignty is going to be painful. Sovereignty is going to be extremely, because most of us are still rushing full speed, breakneck speed in the opposite direction. So you are, and I'm about being able to get out of a ticket. We're talking about the empowerment of African people globally. So if the continent, for example, if the continent of Africa is sovereign, then all of African people around the world are sovereign, because no one else is going to think to put a hand on us, as in Japan, China, whatever now, which is visible. No one's going to think to do that because they fear, as I said before, what we will do in response. These are children. And I give you one last example. I know I'm almost out of time. When we worked at Morehouse, I used any different class days. So I would drive on campus to get her on the days that she worked, and I couldn't help but from where I was parked, I couldn't help but see the guard where people came in and all of the security guards were us. But what was interesting to me was if a European walked on that campus, drove on that campus, they would be asking them, where are you trying to go? What do you need to do? You know, we're here so I can get you to where you should be. Every African who came on the campus driving, not necessarily walking, but driving, they needed to see some ID. They needed to know why they were there. They needed to know exactly what they're doing. And it wasn't that they were sitting there thinking, okay, let me hassle black folks, let me check black folks because I don't trust black folks. That's so ingrained in our perception of ourselves. That's so ingrained in the idea of sovereignty in the sense that these black men who were standing guard knew that if they accosted that European, they had a whole nation behind them. If they accosted those black males or black females who were coming on campus, they could do what they wanted to technically because there wasn't going to be anybody running to their assistance. Same things happening on the streets today. In addition to the fact that they're family. So if we don't have sovereignty, as far as I'm concerned, we don't have sovereignty, and we're not into it. Just like Wade Noble said, if telling our children, teaching our children everything about them in an uncompromising way, we have no character. If we don't have sovereignty and we're not working towards sovereignty, we have no power. Might have a little influence, but we have no power. We're still beggars, hoping that whoever has power will do something in service or in favor to us. That's it.
Papa, thank you so much for the energy. Is there anything that you or any of y'all have going on that you want to invite anybody to as we close out?
Yes. And in fact, it's going to be on the very same day. We do a quarterly men's and women's gathering. And of course, I do one for the women. It's on February 6th. It's online, and I will be posting the information for both to my pages, so they can get the date, time, everything else that's involved tomorrow. But it's February I believe I just said the 6th. That is going to be on, and I'm going to be looking at rights programs, how to create them, should be regarding them, how to think about them. And she's going to be talking about something. I don't know exactly what she's going to be talking about. I'm trying to make the meme now for her. But we invite, of course, all the warriors, male and female, men and women, to come to these quarter gatherings of us. Of course, as you have the site up there, we ask people to come in and support us, not out of charity, but because the work is worthy of their minds. And I appreciate, Warrior, you bringing here. This was interesting. This is the last interview of the year, I believe, and I enjoyed it. We're on break. Usually on break, I don't do this, but I really wanted to come on here with you and have a little chat. So I definitely appreciate you and having this program.
Absolutely, we appreciate you so much. Love you and y'all. Everybody else, good night. I thank you for joining in again.
Absolutely.